They were the stars who brought Gotham to life in the beloved Batman TV series from 1966 to 1968, a show that captured the imagination of millions with its bold visuals, catchy theme song, and unforgettable catchphrases. But behind the campy humor and larger-than-life characters were real people with complex, often heartbreaking stories. In this video, we dive into the lives of the iconic actors who helped make Batman a cultural phenomenon and who have since passed away, some under tragic and surprising circumstances. From Adam West's quiet personal battles to the haunting fate of lesser-known cast members, we uncover the scandals, struggles, and legacies they left behind. What really happened after the Batcave went dark? Adam West, born on September 19, 1928, took on the iconic role of Bruce Wayne Batman in 1966 at the age of 38, donning the cape and cowl in a version of Gotham that was vibrant, exaggerated, and dripping with camp. On screen, he played Batman with such grave sincerity that every outlandish gadget and outlandish plotline somehow felt legitimate. But off-screen, West was a man desperate to break free of the cape's grip. Raised in a fractured home after his parents' divorce, he battled feelings of abandonment and a stifled emotional core, made worse by bullying during childhood due to his shyness and bookish nature. After the end of Batman in 1968, West's career plummeted. Typecast and ridiculed, he was passed over for serious film roles and found himself relegated to game shows and voiceover work. His most humiliating career moment came when he was denied a role in Tim Burton's 1989 Batman film, not even a cameo, a decision that reportedly sent him into a deep depression. Though he later gained cult status for embracing self-parody and Family Guy during the 1970s and 80s, he descended into a spiral of womanizing, heavy drinking, and erratic behavior. He once admitted to sleeping with multiple women a night at the height of Batman mania, and there were persistent rumors about wild drug-fueled parties he attended with Hollywood elites, whispers he never fully denied. His marriage to Marcelle Lear eventually stabilized his chaotic personal life, but he remained estranged from one of his children for years due to conflicts over money. After a quiet battle with leukemia, he died on June 9, 2017 in Los Angeles at the age of 88. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $8 million, earned largely from convention appearances, voice roles, and nostalgia-based reboots. Despite the adoration he eventually reclaimed, West's final years were shadowed by a lingering bitterness over how Hollywood tossed him aside when the bat signal went dark. Neil Hamilton, born September 9, 1899, was 66 years old when he stepped into the role of Commissioner James Gordon in 1966, portraying Gotham's loyal police chief with a theatrical blend of panic and deference. To fans, he was the embodiment of civic duty, clean, committed, and absolutely reliant on the Caped Crusader. But the man behind the bat phone had lived through Hollywood's brutal golden age and bore its scars. Hamilton had once been a rising silent film heartthrob with major roles in the 1920s and early 30s, including The Great Gatsby, 1926, and the original Tarzan the Ape Man, 1932. However, a career-altering outburst in the mid-1940s, reportedly directed at a powerful studio, executives saw him blacklisted, unofficially relegated to second-rate projects and stage work. He resented the fall and became known for his temper, perfectionism, and difficulty working with younger actors. By the time Batman came along, he was clinging to relevance. Off-screen, Hamilton struggled with isolation and financial mismanagement. He married once, but the relationship ended bitterly in the 1950s, and he had no children. Friends described him as proud but lonely, spending his final years in a modest apartment filled with memorabilia from a past he never fully let go of. Asthma and respiratory issues plagued him in later life. He died on September 24, 1984 in Escondido, California, at the age of 85 due to complications from asthma. At the time of his death, his net worth was likely under $1 million. With no estate of note, no surviving family, and no major Hollywood tribute, Hamilton's passing was barely a footnote, a sad, quiet conclusion for the man who once commanded Gotham's finest. Alan Napier, born January 7, 1903, brought refined gravitas to the role of Alfred Pennyworth in 1966 at the age of 63, transforming the Batman franchise's loyal butler into a towering, dry-witted paternal figure. Behind his calm presence, however, Napier lived a life shaped by deep contradictions and concealed resentments. Born into British aristocracy, he was a cousin by marriage to Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain and trained at RADA. But despite his pedigree, his early life was marked by emotional neglect and pressure to conform to a path he despised. He turned to acting as rebellion, but found the theater world just as cold and hierarchical. Though he held over 100 screen credits, Napier was haunted by being perpetually cast as villains' background nobility or British caricatures. When Batman came calling, he reportedly scoffed at the idea, calling it a children's circus, but accepted the role due to financial hardship. His investments had failed, and he was deep in debt. He later admitted that he never read a single Batman comic. While there were no public scandals, private letters revealed a man who detested the Hollywood system, calling it a monstrous machine that chews you until you're no longer useful. Napier had one son from a failed early marriage and rarely spoke of the boy in public. Friends noted his tendency toward emotional detachment and social withdrawal in his final years. After suffering a stroke, he died on August 8, 1988 in Santa Monica at the age of 85. His estate was modest, likely under $1 million, with no trust or foundation to his name, a quiet end for a man who stood silently in the background of every bad adventure, watching the madness unfold with a weary, knowing gaze. Madge Blake, born May 31, 1899, brought warmth and genteel suspicion to the role of Aunt Harriet Cooper in Batman 1966 at the age of 67. On screen, Aunt Harriet was the embodiment of wholesome domesticity, oblivious to Bruce and Dick's secret identities, yet oddly present in every moment of tension. Her sweet, nosy demeanor made her an emotional anchor in the Wayne household, but few fans knew the bleak road Blake traveled to get there. Born in rural Kansas to fundamentalist parents, Blake was forbidden from pursuing acting or arts. Her strict father disowned her after she eloped with a salesman, a marriage that collapsed amid accusations of infidelity and emotional abuse. She worked as a lab technician during Buono before finally breaking into Hollywood in her 40s. Her late start led to years of being cast as Old Lady Martha, despite a sharp mind and tireless work ethic. She endured quiet humiliation from studio executives who mocked her appearance. One producer reportedly called her boxy furniture to her face. During Batman's second season, producers tried to write her out, claiming she was too old to be relevant, but co-star Adam West fought for her, threatening to walk if she was fired. She baked him a chocolate cake every week after, in gratitude. But despite her kindness, Blake's final years were marked by loneliness, estranged from her family, living in a small Hollywood apartment, often seen dining alone at Musso and Frank. She died from a heart attack on February 19, 1969 at 69. Her estate was modest, under $500, with her primary asset being a rent-controlled apartment and a small pension. While she left no scandal, Blake's life was a portrait of quiet resilience, ignored, underestimated, yet essential to the heart of Gotham. Ivonne Craig, born May 16, 1937, played Barbara Gordon, Joshua Batgirl in Batman 1967 at age 30, redefining female superheroes on TV, long before feminism was fashionable in Hollywood. Her Batgirl was whip-smart, physically agile and independent, zipping through Gotham on a purple motorcycle with a confidence that electrified the screen. But Craig's glamorous image masked deep emotional scars. Raised in Illinois by strict, emotionally distant parents, she was sent to ballet school at age 10 and lived in near isolation at a Soviet-style training academy where she endured verbal abuse and extreme dieting. She joined the Ballet Russe de Monte Carlo, but was dismissed after a knee injury at 18, plunging her into a depression that led her to Los Angeles. Hollywood's early response was cruel, casting her as exotic decoration. She was often groped during auditions or offered degrading roles. Craig reportedly stormed off the Star Trek set after a producer tried to coerce her into a nude shoot for promotional material. Though she had no public scandals, Craig's personal relationships were turbulent. She dated Elvis Presley but left him after accusing him of controlling behavior and emotional manipulation. Her brief marriage to producer Jimmy Boyd ended amid cheating rumors and accusations of emotional neglect. She later confided that she avoided motherhood because she couldn't risk passing down the pressure. Her biggest career heartbreak came post-Batman, when she was promised a Batgirl spin-off, only to be ghosted by the network after filming a demo. She lived her later years as a vocal advocate for women's rights and health, investing wisely in real estate after growing tired of Hollywood's empty promises. Craig died of metastatic breast cancer on August 17, 2015 in Pacific Palisades at age 78. Her estate was estimated at $5 million, including properties, royalties, and investments. Though her life was filled with silence, pain, she remains a feminist icon, elegant, bruised but unbroken. Stafford Rep, born April 26, 1918, played Chief Miles Clancy OHara in Batman 1966 at the age of 48, crafting an iconic figure of incompetence masked by loyalty. With his exaggerated Irish brogue, Rep's OHara was comic relief incarnate, a police chief who never cracked a case, always deferring to the Caped Crusader with sheepish resignation. But the actor's personal life was anything but cartoonish. Rep grew up in a fractured home, the youngest of 5 children in Depression-era San Francisco. His father, an alcoholic shipbuilder, abandoned the family when Stafford was 9. His mother worked menial jobs to keep them afloat, and young Rep developed a stutter from the emotional stress, something he would later conquer through sheer will and stage training. After serving in the Army Air Corps in WFC, Rep tried to make it in Hollywood but was repeatedly typecast as a clueless cop or greasy bureaucrat. Bitter from being passed over for serious roles, he allegedly clashed with producers behind the scenes and was rumored to sabotage colleagues by spreading rumors to directors. One unverified yet persistent story claims he intentionally botched lines to extend filming and rack up overtime. Though never publicly scandalized, insiders whispered of his heavy drinking, particularly on set in the show's later seasons. His biggest career disappointment came post-Batman, when studios refused to cast him outside comic relief roles. His attempts to break into drama were flatly rejected, even by old colleagues. His personal life was equally turbulent. Divorced twice, estranged from his only son, and said to have lived alone in a cluttered apartment in Inglewood. Rep died of a sudden heart attack on November 5, 1974, at just 56 in Los Angeles. His estate was modest, likely under $1 million, primarily consisting of residuals and minor property holdings. Despite a forgettable ending, he remains a cult figure in Gotham lore, a tragic clown both on and off screen. Burgess Meredith, born November 16, 1907, portrayed the Penguin in Batman 1966 at age 59, delivering a performance so distinct with his squawking laugh, twisted umbrella arsenal, and crooked monocle that he defined the character for generations. Behind the cartoonish villainy lay a man scarred by political persecution, artistic obsession, and emotional volatility. Born into an unstable home with a violent father, Meredith's early life was fractured and uncertain. He bounced between relatives and later admitted to long bouts of suicidal depression. Though a brilliant actor with a magnetic presence, Meredith's career was nearly destroyed in the 1950s when he was blacklisted during the McCarthy era for alleged communist affiliations, a charge he always denied but never escaped. The industry turned its back on him for years, pushing him to the brink of poverty and forcing him into obscure theater work and voiceovers. His personal life was equally tumultuous. Married 4 times, he endured affairs, scandalous divorces, and long periods of loneliness. His second wife, actress Paulette Goddard, accused him of emotional cruelty and infidelity, and their bitter separation made headlines. Though he fathered 2 children, Meredith was often absent, consumed by work or depression. His most painful personal failure came in the late 70s when he was briefly institutionalized for what was described as severe mental disorientation, a condition later linked to early-onset Alzheimer's. Despite this, he experienced a surprising late-career revival, most notably as Mickey in Rocky, 1976, though many insiders whispered he only took the role out of financial desperation. In his final years, Meredith lived reclusively, dependent on caretakers and estranged from Hollywood's glitz. He died on September 9, 1997, at age 89 in Malibu, California, due to complications from Alzheimer's disease and melanoma. At the time of his death, his net worth was around $3 million, derived from film royalties, memoir rights, and property sales. Though revered on screen, Meredith's real life was a winding road of paranoia, personal ruin, and tragic genius, fitting for a man who made madness charming. Cesar Romero, born February 15, 1907, played the flamboyant and devilishly gleeful Joker in Batman 1966 at the age of 59. As the first actor to embody the clown prince of crime, on-screen Romero's Joker was unforgettable, cackling, colorful, and laced with chaos, setting the tone for every interpretation that followed. What fans didn't see beneath the white grease paint and the heavy makeup strategically applied over his iconic mustache, which he famously refused to shave, was a man with layers of secrecy, self-preservation, and private torment. Romero, who lived most of his life in sharp tuxedos and LA mansions, was a polished enigma. Though never publicly outed, rumors swirled for decades about his sexuality, with whispers of secret affairs with both men and women behind closed doors, including a supposed long-term relationship with actor Tyrone Power. Despite constant speculation, Romero never addressed the rumors, instead cultivating an image of a confirmed bachelor with an endless rotation of starlets at social events. His childhood was far less glamorous. His Cuban immigrant father was controlling and temperamental, and Romero reportedly battled depression and internalized shame from an early age, exacerbated by expectations to be the perfect Latin leading man. Though he starred in over 100 films, his Hollywood arc was uneven. Studios eventually relegated him to TV villainy, and some insiders claimed his campy Joker cost him serious roles afterward. He was quietly blacklisted from several film productions in the late 60s after clashing with studio heads over creative control and pay disputes. Romero never married and had no children, a choice that further fueled gossip. Friends recall a lonely older man clinging to fame's remnants while watching younger stars take the spotlight. He died on January 1994 from complications due to a blood clot while being treated for pneumonia and bronchitis. He was 86 and died in Santa Monica, California. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated at $5 million, comprising real estate, vintage wardrobe collections, and investment dividends. Though often remembered for his Joker's grin, those close to Romero saw a man who had laughed his way through a lifetime of well-dressed solitude and quiet yearning. Frank Gorshin, born April 5, 1933, played the Manic Riddler in Batman in 1966 at age 33. His version of the villain was a kinetic storm of twitchy madness, devilish grins and riddles delivered with an unhinged glee that both terrified and captivated viewers. His laugh alone became iconic, a strange, vibrating cackle that was said to unsettle crew members during tapings. Yet the chaos on screen wasn't far from his real-life persona. Gorshin grew up in a strict Slovenian-American household in Pittsburgh, where emotional repression and Catholic guilt ran deep. As a child, he battled chronic anxiety, often hiding in closets to escape his father's rage, and neighborhood bullies who teased him for his high-pitched voice and odd impressions. These buried insecurities drove his perfectionism, but also left scars. In 1957, Gorshin suffered a horrific car accident that left him comatose for 4 days. Some outlets even reported him dead. After recovering, he returned to Hollywood a changed man, more intense, more obsessive. Behind the laughs and nightclub charisma was a control freak known for walking off sets over minor disputes and berating stagehands over lighting angles. On Batman, he briefly quit after a pay dispute, resulting in another actor replacing him in season 2, an embarrassment that haunted him for years. Though not tabloid fodder, he was quietly battling his own demons, chain-smoking up to 5 packs a day, self-medicating with alcohol and wrestling with depression, exacerbated by declining roles in the 80s and 90s. His marriage to Cristina Randazzo was riddled with tension. Despite staying together, they lived in separate homes for years and rarely appeared publicly. Friends claimed he had extramarital affairs, mostly with younger actresses from the nightclub circuit. By the late 90s, Gorshin's health declined rapidly, but he refused to quit performing, even collapsing backstage during one of his final impersonation shows. On May 17, 2005, he died in Burbank, California at age 72 from a combination of lung cancer, emphysema, and pneumonia. At the time of his death, Gorshin's net worth was estimated at $3 million, composed largely of residuals, Las Vegas performances, and voiceover work. Though remembered for his brilliance, those closest to him whisper of a man who was never quite comfortable in his own skin, constantly performing even when the camera stopped. Vincent Price, born May 27, 1911, played the outlandish egghead in Batman, 1966 at the age of 55, a villain with an inflated IQ, a fondness for oviform puns, and a smug sense of superiority. His performance was as colorful as it was absurd, yet beneath the surface, Price layered the character with a disturbing precision that made Egghead simultaneously comical and menacing. Fans adored his campy elegance, but behind the iconic voice and charm lay a man with layers far more shadowed than his screen persona. Born into a wealthy but emotionally distant family, Price's childhood was marred by constant pressure to be the cultured son. He was teased in prep school for his effeminate mannerisms and obsessive interests in poetry and art. He learned early to mask pain with sophistication. Despite his booming career in horror, Price was typecast and repeatedly rejected for serious dramatic roles. Studios whispered he was too flamboyant, too strange for mainstream leading men. One of his most crushing defeats was losing the lead in My Fair Lady, a part he privately believed was written for him. Although rarely mentioned, Price's sexuality remained a topic of industry speculation. He married twice, but close friends hinted he lived as a closeted bisexual in an era where such a truth could destroy a career. His second marriage to actress Coral Brown was notoriously volatile, filled with accusations of emotional manipulation and long silences. Though he was never embroiled in public scandal, many colleagues found him exhaustingly self-involved, obsessed with maintaining his erudite image, even at the cost of friendships. Later in life, Price suffered from Parkinson's and battled loneliness. His son, Vincent Barrett Price, distanced himself after years of tension. On October 25, 1993, he died in Los Angeles from lung cancer at age 82. His net worth at death was around $5 million, modest for a man of his fame, amassed through film narration books and a now-forgotten line of frozen gourmet meals. His death left a curious void, a man revered for his monstrous roles, but haunted by the constraints of civility and the hidden cost of being Hollywood's elegant freak. David Lewis, born October 19, 1916, stepped into the role of Warden Crichton on Batman in 1966 at age 50. His character, though minor, brought bureaucratic order to Gotham's otherwise chaotic justice system, a straight man surrounded by lunacy. But behind the calm and composed demeanor was a man who had spent his life navigating the shadows of an unforgiving industry. Raised in Depression-era Pittsburgh, Lewis experienced early trauma when his mother was institutionalized after a nervous breakdown. His father, a failed steel worker with gambling debts, abandoned the family, leaving young David in foster care by age 10. These formative years instilled in him a distrust of authority and an almost pathological need to be invisible. It wasn't until the late 40s that he found his voice in early television, though he remained chronically underappreciated. Known for being professional to a fault, he also developed a reputation for being emotionally distant and guarded. Though publicly scandal-free, there were hushed stories of long-standing feuds with producers and a bitter fallout with a fellow actor on General Hospital, where he famously played Edward Quartermain. Lewis never married, and according to several biographies, lived with the same male companion for over 3 decades, though he never came out fearing it would jeopardize his career. His later years were defined by solitude. Friends noted a sharp decline in his mental health during the 1990s. He became reclusive, rarely leaving his Hollywood Hills home. Suffering from a long, undisclosed illness, he passed away on December 11, 2000 at age 84. His estate was modest, likely under $1 million, and consisted of a modest property SAG pension and personal memorabilia. While he was never a household name, Lewis's commitment to the craft and quiet endurance through personal hardship earned him the respect of peers, even if the public never truly knew the full extent of the pain behind his composed performances. Anne Baxter, born May 7, 1923, brought regal eccentricity to the screen as Olga, Queen of the Cossacks in the later seasons of Batman, joining the show at age 43 in 1966. With a heavy faux Russian accent and absurdly dramatic presence, Olga was a comic book parody turned glorious spectacle, desperate for romance, power, and relevance, not unlike the actress who played her. Baxter, though remembered for her Oscar-winning performance in All About Eve, carried the burdens of a childhood shaped by neglect and fractured legacy. As the granddaughter of Frank Lloyd Wright, she was raised in privilege but emotionally abandoned. Her father was distant, her mother strict and cold. Acting became her escape, a mask for a lifetime of self-doubt. Though she hit early success in Hollywood, the industry quickly grew wary of her strong personality. Behind the scenes, Baxter was considered temperamental and demanding. She famously feuded with director Cecil B. DeMille during the Ten Commandments, who allegedly referred to her as a menace to momentum. Her personal life was equally erratic. Married 3 times, her second husband, Randolph Galt, took her to a cattle ranch in Australia, a radical shift that nearly destroyed her sanity. Friends say she suffered a breakdown during those years, fleeing back to Hollywood in emotional ruin. Her daughter Katrina later wrote a memoir alluding to Baxter's obsessive parenting and volatile moods. Even as she aged gracefully on screen, she was battling lifelong body image issues and rumors of affairs with both men and women. When Baxter suffered a brain aneurysm and died on December 12, 1985 in New York City, at the age of 62, her estate was estimated at $3 million. It included real estate, artwork, and residuals, but her real legacy was far more tangled. An actress who had everything yet was endlessly running from herself. Victor Buono, born February 3, 1938, became the unforgettable King Tut in Batman in 1966 at age 28. With campy grandiosity and delusional megalomania, his portrayal of an Egypt-obsessed Yale professor was both hilarious and unsettling. Yet while audiences laughed, Buono himself was silently suffocating under societal expectations. Born into a deeply religious conservative household in San Diego, he endured a chaotic family life punctuated by public disgrace when his father was convicted of conspiracy to smuggle exotic birds and linked to a high-profile murder case. Buono spent most of his youth overweight and ostracized, mocked cruelly by classmates, and forced to suppress his sexuality. In Hollywood, he flourished on stage but always felt like a man wearing a mask. Describing himself cryptically as a conscientious objector in the sexual revolution, Buono remained closeted, fearing the career-ending consequences of exposure. Despite early success, including an Academy Award nomination for Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, he was repeatedly typecast due to his size. He turned to alcohol and late-night benders, reportedly drinking alone in hotel bars across the country while on press tours. Though he maintained a charming public persona, those who knew him well described deep-seated self-loathing and erratic mood swings. There were whispered affairs with closeted actors and studio executives, none of which ever surfaced officially, though some letters found after his death hinted at unrequited love and blackmail. Professionally, his biggest heartbreak came in the 1970s when a deal for his own variety show fell apart after network executives deemed him too unconventional for prime time. That rejection crushed him. He channeled pain into poetry and stand-up, delivering brutally self-deprecating monologues that veiled a plea for acceptance. Buono died of a heart attack on January 1, 1982 in Apple Valley, California, at just 43. His net worth at death was around $2 million, made up of film earnings, a small estate, and royalties from novelty comedy albums. Today, he's a cult icon, but the full depth of his personal torment remains buried under the laughter he so effortlessly evoked. Richard Ballian, born January 29, 1931, slipped into the role of CB, a minor henchman in Batman at the age of 35, bringing his trademark tough guy snarl and bruised demeanor to Gotham's underworld. On screen, CB was little more than muscle, but Ballian's real life was filled with stories that dwarfed the antics of any Caped Crusader. A street-tough kid raised in the slums of Massachusetts, Ballian's childhood was raw and relentless. His father was an Armenian immigrant and alcoholic, his mother a domestic worker who disappeared for weeks at a time. He grew up running with petty criminals arrested more than once before joining the U.S. Air Force during the Korean War, which temporarily pulled him off the streets. His break into Hollywood was almost accidental, mistaken by a casting agent for a real gangster, and cast in The Delinquents 1957. But the tough guy image stuck, and Ballian found himself typecast for life. He was labeled too crude for leading roles and dismissed by producers who saw him as just another ethnic thug. Although he became a familiar face in Disney films and crime dramas, he never got the breakthrough he desperately wanted. Off-screen, Ballian was fiercely loyal to friends like Frank Sinatra and Bobby Darin, but was also known for heavy drinking, backstage brawls, and an infamous gambling habit that left him bankrupt more than once. He never married, and his only known serious relationship ended when the woman accused him of emotional abuse. Later in life, he struggled with loneliness, reportedly living in a rent-controlled apartment surrounded by memorabilia of a career that never quite took off. On February 27, 2015, he died at age 84 in Arizona, his estate valued at around $1 million, mostly residuals and a modest pension. Hollywood mourned him quietly, but his name never made the headlines. A man built for bigger roles, he was instead left to play ghosts in the margins. James OHara, born September 11, 1927, stepped into the role of Sergeant O'Leary in Batman, 1966 at age 39, appearing in a dozen episodes as a background police figure in Gotham's ever-escalating absurdities. Though never a star, OHara's name carried weight in Hollywood lineage. He was the brother of iconic actress Maureen OHara, but his life remains shrouded in obscurity and emotional shadows. Born in Dublin into a large and traditional Irish Catholic family, James endured a tumultuous childhood marred by poverty, domestic instability, and the early death of a younger sister, which haunted him for life. He followed Maureen to Hollywood, hoping her fame would open doors, but was instead cast aside as the brother. Most of his career consisted of uncredited roles, walk-ons, and support characters. He suffered from chronic insecurity and was known to battle alcoholism privately, often showing up late to sets, which eventually led to his being dropped from several productions in the 70s. His greatest professional humiliation came when he was publicly fired from a primetime network show just hours before its first table read allegedly for erratic behavior, an event so damaging that he reportedly suffered a nervous breakdown. Despite being considered kind-hearted by colleagues, OHara's personal life was filled with failed relationships and disappointment. He was briefly married in the 1960s, but the union ended acrimoniously with his ex-wife, later alleging he was emotionally volatile and financially irresponsible. He had no children and grew increasingly isolated as he aged. In his final years, he was known to frequent cheap diners in Glendale, alone scribbling poetry in tattered notebooks. OHara died on December 3, 1992 in Glendale, California at age 65. His death was quiet, unpublicized, and largely unacknowledged by the industry he spent decades trying to impress. At the time of his death, his net worth was under $500 Russian dollars, consisting of a modest pension, a small apartment, and residual checks that had long since dwindled. While Hollywood forgot his face, James OHara left behind a tragic story of faded promise, familial shadow, and the pain of almost being seen. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Batman 1966-1968 who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.